Hey guys, welcome back to Fantasy Tipped. Julian here for the first Drops episode of the season. This is the Drops episode for week 3. Now, during the season, we make these episodes every single week, so do be sure to check back next week for some more players that you might want to consider dropping from your team. Before I jump into the list, drop a like and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We're trying really hard to hit 8,000 subscribers this season, so every single subscription helps, especially if you've been enjoying our videos lately. Now, if you can see, I am back from my honeymoon and I'll be taking over the waiver wire and drops videos going forward for the rest of the season. I'm also probably going to do the weekend videos for the next couple weeks to thank Max for the extra work he's put in lately. So without further ado, guys, let's jump right into the content. And the way I do this is I list 5 forwards, 5 defensemen, and then 5 goalies that I think are drops in at least certain league formats. Let's jump into the forwards now, and the first guy on the list is Ivan Barbashev of the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, Barbashev has been really, really good, and he is getting prime deployment on the top line in Vegas. He is not a drop in all league format. Most of his explosion of his points that he has this year came from the first 2 games of the season. The first game he had 2 goals and 2 assists, and the second he had a goal and an assist. Now, he's still going to do pretty decent for the year, and his time on ice isn't terrible. He's getting 15 minutes plus a game for the most part. So he definitely should be owned in 12-man leagues and more. But below 12-man leagues, he's definitely a player that can be on the waiver wire, someone who is definitely expendable if you want to pick up someone with a more favorable schedule or anything like that. I don't hate hanging on to Barbashev, but I don't hate swapping him out either if you are in a shallower league. The next guy on my drops list is Trevor Moore of the Los Angeles Kings. And so far, he has not been very good to start the year. In the 5 games that he's played, he has only a single point, a goal in the second game of the season. Now, his deployment isn't that bad. He is on the second line with Philip Danault and Kevin Fiala. So, points definitely will start coming at some point. He's not top power play, which does hurt him a little bit as well, but does get PP2 time, so it does see a little bit of power play time. Now, I'm not overly high on him. His time on ice is not too bad, a little bit over 15 minutes for the most part. But once again, kind of like Barbashev, in shallower leagues, this guy is a waiver. Don't feel obligated to hold on to this guy. It's not like he's getting prime deployment and is such an amazing player that you need to hang on to him. If you need to let him go, grab a waiver player to help you win a week or to just get you better off-night deployment, I'm all for that. Trevor Moore is a hold in deep leagues for sure. But if you are in a shallower one, he's definitely someone that you could consider moving. The next guy on this list is Victor Arvidsson of the Edmonton Oilers, and I hate having him here because he was someone I was excited for going into the season. But he really has not been able to get going. And I know the Oilers as a whole have been pretty bad, so it's definitely not all on him. And I do think he still has a decent amount of potential going forward. But in standard 10 to 12 team leagues, he's a drop. If you are in a super, super deep league, I would hang on to him and cross my fingers that the Oilers and him figure it out. Because right now, he's getting not a lot of time on ice. Like a couple games ago, he literally got under 12 minutes of ice time. And he's averaging just about 14, which is not that great. He's playing on the second line with Nude, who's also ice cold right now. And he's just someone who is going to take some time to figure it out. I do believe he will at some point, but if you're in a standard league, this guy is really hurting your team right now, and he can be dropped. The next guy on this list is Gustav Nyquist of the Nashville Predators, and he is still playing on that top line like he was last year with Philip Forsberg and Ryan O'Reilly, which is obviously great deployment. But if you guys listened to my preseason content, I advised you to stay away from Gustav Nyquist. Why? Well, with the acquisition of Stamkos and Marchessault, he was pushed off the top power play just as I predicted. Now, finally, in the most recent game against Detroit, he did manage to get an assist. But honestly, guys, his peripherals are awful, and he's not going to put up points often enough to really merit being on your team unless you're in a super, super deep league. If you're in a super, super deep league, fine, you can hang on to him. But other than that, guys, he's a waiver to me. And there are guys on the waiver wire who can help your team out more by getting off nights or whatever it is. And finally, Will Smith. And, I was kind of excited to see how he would do with the injury to Macklin Celebrini, but he actually got a healthy scratch in the most recent game, despite Macklin Celebrini missing time. Yeah, Will Smith, he definitely has a bright future, but he doesn't really have any fantasy relevance this year at this time. He can be dropped in everything except for dynasty leagues. Jumping into defensemen now, and Brent Burns was someone I advised to not draft under any circumstances. He was going way too early, and honestly, guys, he's a drop in all league formats, in my opinion. He's not seeing PP1 time in Carolina. He's getting old. He's not putting up that many peripherals. He's someone that I'm pretty comfortable with dropping in any format right now. Brady Shea, someone who's not doing all that great in Nashville right now as well. If you're in a super deep league, hang on to him for sure. The safe floor is kind of there. He's putting up a little bit of peripherals, but I wouldn't expect the amount of points that he put up the last couple of years in Carolina, especially only getting PP2 time in Nashville. It's not terrible. So if you are in a deep league, once again, hang on to him, but definitely does not need to be owned in 73% of leagues. Aaron Ekblad's another guy who I thought was actually going to get power play one time this year in Florida, with Brandon Montour departing, but it looks like they're giving it to Boquist. And Boquist isn't really doing that great and is not getting a lot of ice time. But unfortunately, without PP1, the points aren't going to come all that frequently for Ekblad. Now, he has played 7 games and has 3 assists. The most recent game was kind of encouraging, 26 plus minutes of ice time with a couple of assists and pretty good peripherals. But other than that, the rest of the games this season have not been encouraging. So maybe he's taking a step in the right direction. You can hold on to him for another game or two and see if he continues that higher level of play. But if he doesn't, he's definitely a pretty easy drop for me. Next guy on this list is kind of an interesting one because he started off the season pretty hot with 4 points in 4 games. And he's a rookie, so he definitely is intriguing. But honestly, guys, Seamus Casey is someone that does not need to be owned in 19% of leagues. He literally had 7 minutes of ice time last game and 10 minutes the game before. The only real appeal is he's getting PP2 time. And, I mean, PP2 time isn't really that great anyway. He's not someone I'm very high on. He's not putting up really any peripherals. He's a pretty easy drop in basically all formats. And finally, for defenseman, I have Artem Levshinov, and he was the 2nd overall pick in the most recent NHL draft, so I get the hype for him, but he did start the season injured, and now he's being a healthy scratch, and honestly, guys, I don't know how much he's really going to crack the lineup this year, and even if he does, he's not getting PP1 time this year. I don't think he's really going to have a whole lot of fantasy value. Jumping into goalies now, and Ilya Samsonov is my first goalie on the list. He hasn't been that bad, and if you're in a categories league, he's definitely holdable, but in other league formats where you're getting points for, saves and wins, he's not going to get all that many, only because he's starting 1 out of every 3 games so far. That seems to be the trend. 2 starts for Hill, 1 start for Samsonov. That's not enough for me. Definitely doesn't need to be owned in 65% of league. It's the same kind of thing with Varlamov. He started a few games early in the season just, to relieve Sorokin because Sorokin was coming off surgery. But it looks like Sorokin's healthy now, and he should be getting a lot more games going forward. So Varlamov can be dropped in a lot more leagues. He doesn't need to be owned in half the leagues, that's for sure. Artur Silovs has not been very good in the 2 games that he has played, replacing Thatcher Demko. Looks like Kevin Lankinen is probably going to be that number 1 until Demko returns. Lankinen's coming off a shutout and has played pretty good in the games that he has played. So Silovs is not someone you need to be holding on to unless you're in a super, super deep league where you're just desperate for goalies. And then Jonas Korpisalo, or Jonas Korpisalo if you want to pronounce it properly, of the Boston Bruins, does not need to be owned in 17% of leagues. Jeremy Swayman signed before the season began, to everybody's surprise. Honestly, I wasn't expecting that, but it's good to see. And Korpisalo is nothing more than a backup goalie who's going to get back-to-back games and the occasional, 3rd or 4th start. Doesn't need to be owned, really, in any leagues. And then Marc-Andre Fleury of the Minnesota Wild is someone who's not going to get a whole lot of starts this year. Gustafson's actually playing pretty well to start the year, so if he's playing well, he's going to get the majority of the starts. And Fleury will only get the occasional spot start where you definitely can stream him, but definitely not someone you want to be holding the whole year. And that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. If you enjoyed my content today, drop a like and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Feels great to be back recording videos once again, guys. So definitely stay tuned for the weekend video, the waiver wire video, and future drops and waiver wire videos as well. Take care, guys, and I'll catch you in the next episode of Fantasy Tipped.